Black is poised to break through on the kingside in this sharp King's Indian position. Can you see the clever move that Gligoric played to further the kingside attack? Pause the video and have a go for yourself. So, well done to those who found it. The move Gligoric played was knight to h8. This gets the knight out of the way of the rook support of g4. We'll next play g4 and open up the kingside. The knight will come back into the game via f7 and h6. Another move you could have played, bonus points if you found this, was knight to h4. We'll be playing g4 and then our knight and rook will be attacking the g2 square. Now let's see the sequence of moves that led up to this crazy position. Here we have the first ever game played in the Mar del Plata variation of the King's Indian between two strong Soviet grandmasters. It's instructive to see how they both handled the position. Here we have a mainline King's Indian. Black plays e5, challenging the centre, white castles, and black goes knight c6, the main line. We're trying to provoke d5, block the centre so we can bring our knight to the kingside and start an attack. So white does this, d5, knight e7, and here white played knight e1. This is the old-fashioned way of playing the position. He wants to go f3, bring his knight out to d3, develop the queenside with moves like bishop d2 and rook c1, and play b4, c5, finally advancing on the queenside. So he's going for a strategy of piece development before he advances the pawns. The more modern way to play this is the bayonet attack with b4. White basically delays his piece development and instead just throws all his pawns up the board. He wants to open the queenside as fast as possible so that he can bring his pieces into our position. In particular, he wants to exchange off this light squared bishop because we'll need that for our attack later. Anyway, white went knight e1. We go knight e7, a multi-purpose move, covering the c5 square and allowing f5 next move. White went knight d3. Another move that people are playing these days is bishop e3, because after f5, f4, f3, f4, the bishop can come back to f2 and defend the kingside. The bishop covers this diagonal, it also supports the c5 break later on. So for example, g5, rook c1, knight g6, white can even go c5 as a sacrifice here. If we take on c5, white can go b4, drive our knight back, and now he's got half open c-file where the c7 pawn is a target. Just one possibility. Anyway, white went knight d3, black goes f5, what else? Now, here white went f3. Another more cunning plan is for white to defer f3, not play it for the time being, because after bishop d2 and f4, white's actually not forced to play f3. And if we go for this kingside attack while white hasn't played f3, he has the chance to maybe play moves like king h1, g3 and open up the kingside, preventing our attack. Anyway, white was not aware of this nuance and went f3. We go f4, blocking up the kingside. Our plan is very simple: knight f6, g5, h5, bring the knight to g6, and finally go for the g4 break. We may also go for this cunning manoeuvre where we play rook f7, bishop f8, and rook g7 later on. Now this looks paradoxical. Why would we waste 3 moves just swapping the position of the bishop and rook? But it's very standard in the King's Indian. The rook will be fantastic on this g-file for the attack. The bishop will be needed to support the d6 square and indirectly protect c5. This slows white's queenside play down. Anyway, white went bishop d2. Again, it doesn't look very strong, does it? I mean, white's developing behind his closed pawn chain, playing insipid moves like bishop d2, when he should be starting the attack with b4, a4 and c5. So black went knight f6, now finally b4, g5 and c5. White's finally threatening to open up the queenside partially. He probably doesn't want to take on d6 because after we recapture, it's very hard for white to actually penetrate along the c-file as we can cover all the squares quite well. White can end up actually wasting enough time that we have time for our kingside attack to break through. A better plan is for white to go a4, c6, doesn't even mind sacrificing a pawn with c6 to get the queenside open and get his pieces flowing into the game. Black went h5, the standard plan as I said, and now here went knight f2. Now I think this is white's first inaccuracy, because white wants to be playing actively on the side where his pieces are. He should have played a4, and then after knight g6 he can go c6. Now here he's threatening c takes b7, and after bishop takes b7, this distracts the bishop off this important diagonal, prevents g4 for the time being, as the bishop won't be supporting it, and also later on this bishop may need to sacrifice itself on h3 for the attack to break through, and so c6 would have been a better way to play. But anyway, white went knight f2. This does kind of prevent g4 for the time being. White's probably going to go h3 as well, just try and stop this, but black will always force this g4 move through after moves like knight g6, and after this manoeuvre, once his rook's on the g file, g4 will be coming. Anyway, black went knight g6, rook c1. Again, I think a4 would have been better, but we've covered that already. And now rook f7, black goes for this manoeuvre. Now white went c takes d6. This is quite a poor move because after c takes, white has no entry squares along the c file. c7 and c8 will both be covered, and after c takes d6, it's very hard for white to actually break through in this symmetrical 2-on-2 queenside pawn structure. There have been games where white's gone knight b5, knight c7, and actually captured this rook on a8, and black has allowed that because it's given him time to do his kingside attack. He should have gone c6 instead, and now he's threatening c takes b7. Black does not want to capture on c6 because after recaptures, he has the d5 square for his knight, and he also has the c4 square for his bishop. We don't want an open centre because we want to keep it closed for our kingside attack. So anyway, white went c takes d6, c takes, and a4. White finally starts advancing on the queen side. Black goes for the standard game plan with bishop f8, a5, and rook g7. The pieces are fully ready for this kingside attack to start. Now here white went h3. This is quite a bad inaccuracy because we will just move our knight out of the way as I showed at the start and then go g4. It doesn't matter that this is a sacrifice because we're opening files against white's king. Our attack is worth at least a pawn. It would have been better for white. This is a bit of a stockfish way to play, but he should have played king h1. And now after we play, let's say king h8, white can go g3. Now g4 doesn't work as well because white will open the king side in his favour with moves like f takes, knight takes, and now what black's forced into something like knight h5, and the kingside attack is no longer happening because white can bring his pieces into the defence. He can play queen e1, his bishops are coming in to defend, but white didn't do this, he played h3. Now this gives black the chance to play knight h8, one of my favourite moves of this game. Move the knight to the corner of the board and then bring it back with knight f7, knight h6 to support g4. Knight b5. You can see what white's doing. He just wants to double up on the c file, play knight to c7. If he gets to knight to e6, this could be bad as the bishop will be forced to exchange itself with this knight, getting rid of our vital light square bishop and opening the centre, but that's 3 or 4 moves away. So in the meantime, black has the chance to play g4, stunning sacrifice, because after f takes, h takes, h takes, black can leave this weak, isolated double pawn where it is and start moving his pieces into the attack to play against it. So white's a pawn up, but he's not really going to feel it. Black went a6 to, my rule of thumb is just make one defensive move on the side where your opponent's attacking to slow them down. Then you can proceed on your side with impunity. So white's forced back to a3, we win a tempo, and now we play our standard developing move, bishop d7. We want to bring our rook to c8, and then we want to play this knight f7, h6 manoeuvre. White's can go knight c4. He can't really play b5 here because it won't really achieve anything. I mean, if he plays b5 and then spends a move on b takes, he'll still be in the same position where his only active plan is to go knight c4, b6. So he just does that immediately with knight c4. Black goes rook to c8, and here white went knight b6. You can see what he's going for. Rook takes, bishop takes, and black wisely went bishop back to e8. He's got both his bishops on the back rank, but they've both got potential. They're both going places, so just give him time. White went bishop a3. He could have, a better move would have been queen c2 because he wants to exchange the queens off, and then without queens on the board, black's kingside attack is going nowhere. But he played bishop a3. I guess his idea was to go b5, but even after that, the d6 pawn's well defended, so this bishop's not doing so much on a3. Black went knight f7, queen c2. Now white is threatening to go queen c8, and if our queen tries to escape, white will be bringing more pieces into the attack with rook c1, c7. We want to avoid this. So black went knight h6. Now he should have gone queen c8. We'd take on c8, knight takes. Maybe we'd play bishop b5, exchange off our light square bishop, knight a7, and then we take on g4. This is actually a bit of a better endgame for black, but it's what white should have gone for. White can capture this pawn, black will probably end up capturing this pawn, and it would be an endgame grind. But instead, white was a bit too ambitious with g5. This does distract our rook from the second rank, which makes it easier for white to penetrate later on. So rook takes, rook c1, white wants to bring his queen to c7. We go rook to g3. The idea here is basically to bring the knights in from behind, and then our queen can come to h4 when we'll be threatening moves like f3 as well. Bishop b2, white sees the error of his ways and brings the bishop back to a slightly more active square and stops it from hanging on a3. Knight f g4, knight takes, bishop takes, and rook takes. So this sequence of exchanges has taken all of the defenders away from white's king. Black has ample time to bring his queen into the attack to g5 or h4. He'll be bringing his bishop to g4 to e7 if he has time. He could just leave it on f8. It's a great defender. So white went queen f2 to defend. We go bishop to g6, putting pressure on this e4 pawn. If we capture on e4, it will be game over because we'll be taking on g2. So white went rook c4 to defend this pawn. It looks like a bit of an ugly move, but white's actually already losing here because we're going queen e7. We want to bring the queen to the h-file, the rook to the h-file, and white has no way to actually prevent this rook h1 check. He's going to have to run with his king and defend somehow. So white went bishop c3, again another bishop move. This bishop's gone to a3, b2, and now c3. He's wasted 3 tempi in this sharp pawn race on both flanks, which can't be a good idea. Queen h7, queen e2, and rook h4. White went king f2, just stepping away from this check, but black played an amazing move. I love this move. Now see if you can find what black played. There are multiple ways to win, but I think this is the prettiest. So the move is f3. Now whichever way white captures, he would end up losing his queen. So if he captured with the pawn, we go rook h2 check with a skewer. If he captures with the king, we'll go bishop h5 check with a skewer. And if he captures with the queen, we'll go rook f4 with a pin. So white is actually forced to just move his queen out of the way. Black goes rook f4, threatening a discovery. G takes, queen h2 check, and now I'll be running white's king all over the board. It'll be a king hunt. White goes king h1, queen h1 check, king e2, black goes bishop f5. Now notice white has no way to actually attack black's king. Even though there's no pawns around black's king, it's completely safe. Something like rook c8 and knight d7 is far too slow because white's king is already very exposed. White goes king d2, rook takes f3, gain time on the queen. Queen comes to g5 check, but bishop g7 is fine. Now queen d8 check, king h7, and white has no more checks. After something like rook c8 threatening to drive black's king into the open, black will have time to deliver checkmate with moves like rook f2 and drive white's king up the board. White went king c2. Maybe in a in a better world, he could have found some kind of sanctuary on b3, bring his knight back to block all the checks, but he's not got time for that. Black goes rook f2 check, bishop d2, queen d1 check, supported by the bishop, king c3, queen a1 check, and here white actually resigned the game. If white continues to run to d3, we've got bishop e2 check. For example, he might go king e3, and one potential checkmate is rook f3, king takes, and queen to f1 mate. So an amazing kingside attack. I hope you've learnt a lot from this game and you can apply it in your own games. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.